Hello, this is a discourse on the book Christ in You with references from A Course in Miracles, the Holy Bible, and near-death experience. And my name is Angel Christchild, and I'm joined today by my friend. Welcome, friend.
Welcome, yeah. Good
And
lesson.
welcome. Sorry, I was just going to welcome our listeners as well.
Good lesson for everybody.
Yes, so this is lesson 19 in part 1, Heaven is Within You, which is pretty cool. Heaven within you.
That's an amazing concept. That is really nice
Mhm.
to hear those words, but then he is really going to relate some personal experience with his experience here. So
That is meaningful, yeah. Personal experience is always meaningful.
yeah, it's always neat to hear the story.
Yes, it is. People love stories.
Yep.
So shall we begin?
Yeah, it says, may I help you in this chapter by giving you some little experience of my own. I think you know that the passing from the earth plane is different for almost every individual and is entirely what one makes it. The birth into real life should be exactly like an awakening on a beautiful morning when the dawn is stealing over the land, touching everything with a purity and freshness belonging only to the first hours of the day.
Isn't that just a beautiful similarity, a comparison?
Mm,
And
yeah.
I just wanted to mention too, before I went too much further, passing from the earth plane is different in every individual. I thought it was kind of interesting that he said we knew that. Didn't you find that interesting? I think you know, he said that the passing from the earth plane is different for almost every individual.
I didn't realize that myself, but maybe he was doing that in a way to kind of like maybe trying to get us to like remember that from like our higher level or something. Like remember,
Oh,
and like even though maybe we don't remember, but somewhere on a higher level we get it. We do remember having done that before.
interesting. I didn't think of that. That's a really good idea. Because yes, all knowledge is within us. If heaven's within us, so is all knowledge. So that's a very good point, Fern. Yeah, that's good. The other thing I wanted to say about this passing from the earth plane is different, is with respect to the near-death experience, when people have their lives played out in front of them like a 3D movie. And it teaches us that we have all individual lives, and each one of us has a life review. So it would be an individual experience. Although he doesn't mention any near-death experience or any life review in this book. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's like our life flashes before our eyes.
Yeah. And it is reviewed by spiritual entities with you, pointing out all the times you came from good and questioning why you didn't, and kind of like a teacher. I suppose that's what it is. It's a teaching. Yeah. So,
It is meant that we should open our eyes and see God everywhere. Just this simple, homely, all familiar awakening into harmony and peace. God grant that you all may begin this experience where you are. Then you will enter more fully into reality when that which is in part shall be done away.
Nice. That's a nice blessing.
And there's a Bible verse. Let's see if I can pull that up right quick
Okay.
here. But while I'm pulling that up here, I was seeing that word reality.
Mm-hmm.
It says you will enter more fully into reality.
Ah,
And earlier in the chapter there, you said the birth into real life should be exactly like an awakening on a beautiful morning. So he's implying that that what is real is that heavenly
right,
existence.
right. So was that Bible verse Corinthians? Is that the one you wanted to read?
Ah, yes,
Yeah,
there
I've
it
got it
is.
right here. But when that which is perfect is come, then that which is in part shall be done away. So we don't need little parts and fragments and separation from the whole when we have perfection.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Okay, so shall we continue?
Yeah. The consciousness of God is stealing over the earth, touching all things into purity and truth by its burning, glowing love. The fire descends and ascends as revealed to you in the symbolic sacrifice of Abel.
I just wanted to tell you, or just remind people that Abel is the son of Adam and Eve, and he was the brother of Cain and Abel, the brothers that fought. Is there a good Bible verse, or shall I just explain that a little bit for people?
This might take some explanation. This is kind of symbolic.
Yeah, I mean, basically, Abel gave a sacrifice to God that God approved of, which was the meat of the lamb, because they were into sacrificing those days. And Cain gave a symbol of the plants of the earth, weed and fruits and so on. And God didn't find that in his favor for some unknown reason. And basically what happened was Abel had God's favor and Cain didn't. So out of jealousy, Cain killed his brother Abel. So I'm not really 100% sure what is meant by Cain and Abel's conflict and the sacrifice in this part of the book, because it goes on to say all things are revealed to you in your scriptures. So I'm not really sure why this has been brought up, to be quite honest with you.
Maybe Abel was like really connected with the consciousness of God, and that was like a fire essentially that kind of like descended from heaven, so to speak, symbolically. He felt it within himself, and he was ascending in his like connection with the divine. So he was like part of that flow of like realization, like profound realization or gestalt moment or something.
Yeah.
And then maybe the other brother was jealous of that and did something bad to him, but really it's for everybody, right? Anybody, even his brother, could have connected with God.
Yeah,
Just
he could have, instead of killing his brother, he could have courted God's favor.
right.
But, this is a fallen world we're living in, and it's certainly ego controlled. And I suppose that Cain gave his control of himself over to the ego and did a terrible transgression against himself and his brother and God. So I'm just not really sure how this fits in, but I just wanted to express that. And it's a mystery.
Well, it says it's kind of symbolic anyway, so,
Uh-huh.
but it says, then all things are revealed to you in your scriptures. Man has made this book the medium of interpretation, wherein God reveals wisdom.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
You okay?
Yeah.
And in the Bible verse there in Hebrews, did you want to read that? Because that might gain a little insight too.
Yes. See. That was number 2.
Yeah, reference to Hebrews 11:4.
By faith, Abel brought God a better offering than Cain did. By faith, he was commended as righteous when God spoke well of his offerings. And by faith, Abel still speaks, even though he is dead.
Interesting.
Maybe he speaks through his story that he connected with God so profoundly in some symbolic way.
Symbolically, yeah.
Yeah, but then there's another verse here coming up here that says, if you only knew, well, the book continues, if you only knew, you could read God in every inspired work, but the Bible is your rich and hallowed treasure. And around the word but is Psalms 119. Blessed are those whose ways are blameless, who walk according to the law of the Lord. Blessed are those who keep his statutes and seek him with all their heart. They do no wrong, but follow his way.
Right.
Then the last part of that paragraph here is, in this ancient story, you find the eternal truth of the two in one, the place of meeting, a place of sacrifice. Read carefully. So,
Certainly. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that in A Course in Miracles, fear is part of the sense world. And I think they talk about it in our book too, this Christ in You book, that it doesn't belong in the life of a ascended person. It doesn't belong in heaven. So fear is a stranger, according to A Course in Miracles. And I also wanted to mention that the Bible is a rich and hallowed treasure, but according to this book, we can read God into every inspired work. So it's not the only book that we can connect with God. In fact, this book itself is one that can be connecting with God. And definitely A Course in Miracles is that as well. So, okay, so shall we continue on page 77?
Yeah, it says, I passed into the plane of realities gently. Speaking of his story, of his transition, I passed into the plane of realities gently. My transition was entirely unexpected by my friends. For this, I thank God, as my dear ones were spared the cruel anticipation and dread of separation. This was a great help to me, as I soon found I could comfort and help them to something of my joy. This we can all do. What we cannot do is rid you of false beliefs.
Right.
This you must do yourselves.
We have to do that for ourselves. And it's interesting because I've heard this concept before. What I cannot do is rid yourself of your false beliefs. And it looks like if you don't rid yourself of the false beliefs, you will still hold them when you pass into the afterlife. So it's part of what we should be doing now. And it says also, it's nothing but an emanation from the material sense and can be dispelled in an instant, according to A Course in Miracles. And so if the situation arises that seems to be disturbing, quickly dispel the illusion of fear by repeating these thoughts again. Should you be tempted to become angry with someone, tell him silently, light and joy and peace abide in you. Your sinlessness is guaranteed by God. Light and joy and peace abide in me. And then there's another verse here. That's from the workbook, by the way. And this is the goal of the ego. If the goal of the ego autonomy could be accomplished, God's purpose could be defeated. So if the ego could defeat God, it's impossible. Only by learning what fear is can you finally learn to distinguish the possible from the impossible, the false from the true. According to the ego's teaching, that part of us that thinks we're separate, its goal can be accomplished and God's purpose cannot. According to the Holy Spirit teaching, only God's purpose can be accomplished, and it is accomplished already. And that's from the text, a section called The Dynamics of the Ego. So it's already been accomplished. We're just lagging in time. We can't see it.
It's interesting about the false beliefs. Yeah.
Yes.
It's good to do that work here, not just wait around till the end and be like, oh, I wish I would have done the work I should have been doing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Well, this work of ridding of those false beliefs, you must do yourselves. You can never lose your own here or hereafter. More than that, you find that your own is greater, your circle is wider, your loved ones infinitely more beautiful and even more familiar, for there is nothing strange in love.
Yeah, people find that also in the near-death experience when they're greeted by their loved ones. The loved ones come to them fully healed, and if the person was blind, they're no longer blind. If they were sick, they're no longer sick, and they're healthy and well, and about age 30. So that's consistent with the near-death experience too.
Yeah. Rejoice. Have no fear. Fear is the cloud that dims the spiritual vision. The angels came to say, fear not. Fear would keep you from all that is good. And I got the Bible reference up here for Matthew 28:5 regarding the angels. Reference number 1. The angels said to the woman, do not be afraid, for I know that you are looking for Jesus who was crucified.
Yes.
So there's continuing on here, it says, it is nothing more than an emanation from the material sense regarding fear.
Right.
And it can be dispelled in an instant by the perfect love. And there's a good Bible reference right here. Really good talking about what is perfect love. Reference number 2 is 1 John 4:18. There is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear, because fear has to do with punishment. The one who fears is not made perfect in love.
I know that fear is a big block too. It talks about that in the Course in Miracles. And that verse that I've read, that's how we dispel fear. By seeing light and joy and peace abiding in your brother or sister. And seeing their sinlessness, you grant yourself your own sinlessness. Which is a bit different from the Christian perspective that emanates from some people.
That's really profound. Yeah, that love dispels the fear, and the fear is about punishment and all this feelings of like gotta kind of like be afraid of punishment, right? Or
Yeah,
feeling guilty of like sin or whatever, and the whole thing with
yes, the fear of evil, the fear of God, the fear of all of man. Of course, teaches exactly the opposite, to see peace, joy, and love in your fellow human being. And that's how you find it for yourself, instead of seeing fear and evil in that person.
yeah.
Yes.
That's good. Perfect. That's exactly what the book is saying here. Man is right. Man is rising out of fear of evil, the fear of God and the fear of man. So we're rising out of all these fears of
Yes.
all the stuff around us and realizing we are essentially the same being around us. Is not separate. We're not separate, right?
Right.
So it says the truth will set you free, with a quote to a Bible verse around the word free.
Mm-hmm.
The truth will set you free from all that separates man from God.
Yeah.
And this good verse here, reference 3 John 8:32. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free.
The truth being who you are as a powerful spiritual being, unlimited and eternal.
Mm.
Yeah. And not separate. Very interesting.
Yeah. Makes perfect sense.
It does. So, shall we go on?
Yes, it says the very heathen are seeking God by the lowliest worship, for in their worship is aspiration. I discovered this when freed from the body.
I'd like to discuss that a bit with you.
Mhm.
So do you think that in this chapter, they're saying that even the atheists, the heathens, the godless are seeking God, that even in their belief in separation, they are aspiring to find God?
Yeah, that makes sense. Like they may be spinning off in different directions, but it's all leading back. It's all like all roads leading back to one location.
Mm-hmm.
Or they might be trying to disprove that God exists, but then realize that it's so miraculous what they're discovering. They're trying to explain away with science, but then they realize, oh man, this can't be explained away very as just happenstance. Like
Yeah,
there was a greater behind this.
I've actually heard of that before, of a university professor who set out to disprove that Jesus ever lived, and he ended up being a Christian. Oh yeah, that can happen. Okay, so shall we go on?
So he says, I discovered this when freed from the body. I was slow to comprehend that I had passed through the experience called death to find myself a living and breathing soul, never so much alive as then. So he felt alive even though he passed through the veil of death.
Well, in fact, he says never so much alive. He was more alive than he's ever been.
Mm.
That's going to be quite a shock for some people, especially people who feel like they have to suicide.
Yeah. He says it was too much for me. I felt overwhelmed by the reality and the unlimited sense of things slowly dawning upon me.
Mm.
Was it a delicious dream? Question mark. You see, much of my false belief clung to me. I had expected a tremendous change in personality. I forgot that Jesus showed his hands and his feet, the same Jesus. And there's a Bible reference there. So I think he's saying that he expected some drastic change, but he felt like he was himself there, just
Yes.
being really alive and
Self, right?
wondering what was going on here.
Mhm. No, more than one person said that in near-death experience. Oh, yeah. They were not expecting to find themselves outside of their bodies, sometimes up above their bodies, traveling through a tunnel of light, being met by beings. None of that was expected. Although I think maybe now people are starting to expect that a bit more because people are talking about it for so long. But yeah, people survive after death.
Yeah. Says, how slow are we to believe? But when we are ready to learn, we forget all error and ignorance and enter quickly into truth, which is our own.
Mhm.
And there's a reference here around I forgot. Or no, sorry, there's a reference here about, there's one reference, but there's a better reference here, I think, around how slow are we to believe.
Right.
It's Luke 24:25. He said to them, how foolish you are, and how slow to believe all that the prophets have spoken.
Okay.
So believe that he's saying, believe me, I went through the experience. And he says, continuing on in the book, bless and thank God for the knowledge of the wholeness and unity of the race. I tell you, there is nothing lost into which God has breathed the breath of life. I thought also that I had not surely gone to heaven, for I did not seem to be in any place. I had a new understanding, a fresh, living consciousness of God. My
So
eyes see.
I just wanted to point out that sometimes people don't go directly to heaven. In fact, they often go to what the A Course in Miracles calls the Borderlands. I've mentioned that before in previous lessons. And the Borderlands is a place between heaven and earth. And I think it's a place where people learn to see the truth and leave the false behind. So I think that's exactly what he's referring to, is this place where he's learning to accept the truth for himself and leave falsity behind. Because he says he has a fresh living consciousness and his eyes are open. These eyes could see.
Mm.
The scales have fallen from his inner vision.
And love seemed the very breath of being.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's neat. That's neat. He kind of said, yeah, I had false beliefs clinging to me,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't realize that I was in heaven, because it didn't seem like the heaven of like whatever maybe he was taught in his religious beliefs, but he didn't seem to really be in like any specific place. He just all of a sudden he was himself, but he was like fresh and alive as ever before, and then suddenly having new understandings, and he felt like connected with the consciousness of God, right? And he started to see the truth.
Yes.
It's really, really exciting.
Yes.
The scales had fallen from my inner vision, he said, and there's a Bible reference regarding that.
Mhm.
Acts 9:18. Immediately, something like scales fell from Saul's eyes, and he could see again. He got up and was baptized.
Okay. That's probably got a lot to do with letting go of the false illusions, because those are the sense, the sense illusions would fall like scales from our eyes. And in A Course in Miracles, I didn't actually look for a quote, but I just realized that there's the holy instant can be when you suddenly connect with the Holy Spirit and the scales do fall from your eyes.
Mm.
So that's called a holy instant in Course in Miracles.
Beloved seemed the very breath of being. It was too much to enter into. Then it was as though I slept. Oh, how can I tell of the awakening? Such an awakening will be yours too.
Sounds like he was undergoing some kind of transformation while he rested, and then he was ready for another awakening.
Mhm. Guess even dead people need naps, right?
I guess so. Dead people need naps. Oh my. Okay. Well, that awakening sounds pretty good too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Such an awakening will be yours too! Exclamation point. The best and highest I had ever realized, I had ever imagined, was realized. The deepest longing of my nature satisfied, my purest thought answered. Spiritual truths were no longer in some far distance, but a part of my very self. This had always been. The only change that had come about was my unclouded consciousness of God. Now you see why I give you my personal experience, that you may know that heaven is indeed within.
So heaven within him, because the scales had fallen from his inner vision. Well, the Course also teaches that heaven is within. And there's a nice quote I can read now. It says, "Beautiful child of God, you are asking only for what I promised you. Do you believe that I would deceive you? The kingdom of heaven is within you. Believe that the truth is in me, for I know that it is in you." So that's Jesus talking. And he's saying that the truth is in us, most likely because he can see it in us, feel it, and experience, because we're all one. And that's from the text called "The Problem and the Answer."
Hmm.
And yeah, pretty hopeful, I would say.
That's what the Bible says too, because there's a Bible reference regarding heaven when he says heaven is indeed within.
Mm-hmm.
That reference is Luke 17:21. Nor will people say, there it is, or here it is, because the kingdom of God is in your midst.
Yeah, so I don't know about you. We both had a Christian upbringing, and that wasn't something that was taught.
Yeah, he picks verses that match with what the book is saying.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like little nuggets that maybe we hadn't been taught in traditional settings.
Yes, but there it is in the Bible.
Yeah.
So much. so rich.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, shall we continue?
It was as if I had just begun real life. I was a child with everything to learn. And from then until now, the unfoldment has never ceased. Ever fresh visions, wider horizons, reaching after a richer satisfaction to find that God is without beginning and without end. Love never rests in enjoyment of itself. Love must pour itself out, and a longing came to me to help those who were coming along the road I had traveled. Oh, exclamation point, to tell them something of the indwelling Christ.
Mm.
And there's a Bible reference around the word indwelling. A couple good references here. Remain in me as I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain on the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. I am the vine. You are the branches. You remain in me, and I in you.
Right.
You will bear much fruit, but apart from me, you can do nothing.
Mm. We're just branches of the tree. Without the tree, we're dead branches.
Yeah.
And Jesus, in fact, did come to rescue us from the death that we created for ourselves, to help us realize our eternal life within.
Yeah, it's in us. And so another good verse here, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith. And I pray that you, being rooted and established in love.
Okay. Very good.
Yeah, all good references there. And so he continues, we love you all, and I long to show you what I possess. I want you to understand that there is no separation between us.
Mm.
We are interior inhabitants, but there are other interpenetrating states of existence. Of them, I will not speak now.
That's very interesting. I'd like to know more about that. But with respect to the no separation between us, as you know, friend, this is a very critical part of Course in Miracles, and there's a verse I wanted to share with you. It says, the body is outside you and but seems to surround you, shutting you off from the others and keeping you apart from them and them from you. It is not there. There is no barrier between God and his Son, nor can God's Son be separated from himself except in illusions. So the body's not there because we're living in an illusion. Within the illusion, the body's there. In form, the body's there, but in content, it's not. And we are actually at home in heaven, heaven an illusion. Isn't that just a challenge, isn't it, to grasp that?
Is it like the movie, The Matrix?
Yeah, I didn't, well, I watched it, but I don't remember it. Something like that, but I don't remember, I'm sorry. Guess it didn't make a big impression on me. But it's more like real life than a movie, because now we're talking about real life. Okay, shall we read on?
Yeah. It says, it is a great joy to be able to reach you with these thoughts. You need not wait for heaven. God, heaven, the whole of good is yours now.
And there's another little verse I wanted to share from the Course. It says, instead of seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, say, will ye first the kingdom of heaven? And you have said, I know what I am, and I accept my own inheritance. And that's from a section of the text of Course in Miracles called Judgment and the Authority Problem. So instead of seeking the kingdom of heaven, we will it. We use our will to reach the kingdom of heaven. Because the ego has us seek and not find. And we spend our lives seeking and not finding. So instead we would will it. We would will the kingdom of heaven. Yeah.
Interesting. We don't have to go on crazy paths
No,
that lead astray. We can go on more of a straight path.
right. Yes. Good insight. Quite so.
So God, heaven, the whole of good is yours now. Christ is God incarnate and dwells within your heart, so near that the feeblest whisper is heard. Before you speak, he hears and answers. And there's a Bible verse, Isaiah 65:24. Before they call, I will answer. While they are still speaking, I will hear. So he's there. He hears and answers, for he is behind all thought and speech. He also fills all space.
I wonder if that means fills all space here in this illusion or in truth, or both. Within. Heaven is within. So probably it means he fills all spaces within. Because A Course in Miracle teaches that you can't have God in an illusion, or you'll make God real. That's why we have Jesus to help us out of the illusion.
Maybe it's talking about these interior inhabitants. He's calling himself.
Yes.
God is within us. Really.
Nice to know more about that.
So maybe what's being projected
Mm-hmm.
and looks like it's outside of us is really our projection of our creation. But God is like this immovable, infinite, loving essence within us, or heaven is within us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, that was a particularly rich and vital lesson this week. And I'd like to thank you for joining me, friend, and thank you to our listeners. And we look forward to connecting with you again next week when we delve into the 20th lesson, Growth Real and Unreal. So that's going to be interesting to find out what the unreal growth is all about and how we can replace it with real growth. It's a small but power-packed lesson. And so we'll see you next week.
All right. Thank you. See you next week.
Thank you, friend.